The cabin lights were dimmed to a soft blue glow as Flight 782 sliced through the night sky, the steady hum of the engines blending with the shallow breaths of exhausted passengers. And somewhere between resistance and surrender, Amelia Carter finally let her eyes close. She hadn't intended to fall asleep. Single mothers rarely planned rest. It arrived only when the body collapsed under the weight of carrying too much for too long. Her back was stiff against the seat, her arms wrapped tightly around a faded backpack that held everything that mattered: snacks, measured carefully to last, folded medical reports with highlighted notes, and a crumpled drawing made by small hands that read, in uneven letters, "I love you, Mommy." The week behind her had been brutal. Hospital corridors that smelled of antiseptic and fear, job interviews that ended with polite smiles and silent rejections, nights spent calculating numbers that never added up. Her son Ethan was safe for now, asleep at her sister's apartment. But safety always felt temporary. This flight was meant to be quiet suffering, nothing more. Yet exhaustion crept in gently, loosening her grip on control. When a light tremor shook the plane, her head tilted without permission, drifting sideways until it rested against a stranger's shoulder. Warmth met her cheek. She stirred faintly but did not wake. The stranger did not move away. He did not stiffen or sigh. He simply stayed still, as if instinctively understanding that the weight leaning against him was more than just physical. Colonel Daniel Reeves, a senior officer returning from a closed-door briefing overseas, had learned long ago the difference between discomfort and duty. His uniform was hidden beneath civilian clothes, but years of command lived in the straight line of his spine and the restraint of his movements. He glanced down briefly, noticing the tension etched into the woman's face even in sleep, the shadows beneath her eyes that spoke of nights without rest. Something inside him softened unexpectedly. Authority had been his companion for decades, but so had loss. His wife was gone. His daughter was distant. Service had given him purpose and taken warmth in return. And now, in the quiet of a darkened cabin, a stranger leaned against him as if his shoulder were a place of safety. The flight attendants noticed and said nothing. Some moments did not need interruption. Amelia slept deeply, her breathing uneven at first, then slowly calming, as though her body recognized security before her mind ever could. Minutes stretched into an hour. Daniel's arm tingled, but he did not shift. He remembered nights spent alert in hostile territory, where sleep was dangerous and rare. He wondered how many invisible battles this woman had fought alone. The plane moved steadily through the night, carrying lives that would intersect briefly and then disappear from one another forever, or so it seemed. When Amelia stirred, it was gradual, like surfacing from deep water. Her fingers tightened around the backpack. Her brow creased. Then her eyes opened. Confusion clouded her vision for a moment. She registered warmth first, then the solid presence beneath her cheek. Her breath caught sharply as reality snapped into place. She pulled back instantly, cheeks flushing, heart pounding. "I'm so sorry," she whispered, panic and embarrassment tangling in her voice. "I didn't mean to, I never—" Daniel turned toward her fully for the first time, his expression calm, unbothered, steady. "It's all right," he said quietly. "You looked like you needed the rest." The word struck deeper than she expected. Amelia swallowed, nodding, blinking fast. "Thank you for not moving," she added, managing a small, tired smile. "Most people would have." Daniel shrugged slightly. "Most people don't understand how rare real sleep is." Silence settled between them again, but it was no longer awkward. It carried awareness now. Amelia turned toward the window, watching pale clouds drift past like ghosts. She told herself not to think about how safe she had felt, about the warmth she had lost when she moved away. She reminded herself she was used to doing everything alone. Still, something had shifted. The plane hit turbulence again, stronger this time. A sudden drop rippled through the cabin, drawing gasps. Amelia's hand clenched the armrest instinctively. Daniel noticed immediately. "You all right?" he asked. She nodded, though fear flickered behind her eyes. "I hate flying," she admitted softly, "but driving cross-country with no money and a sick kid didn't seem smarter." The words slipped out before she could stop them. Daniel didn't push, but he didn't ignore them either. "Your son?" he asked gently. She nodded. "Ethan, 7, asthma, it's been a hard year." There, it was the truth she rarely spoke aloud. Daniel felt a weight settle in his chest. He had led missions, carried secrets, made decisions that cost lives. Yet nothing humbled him more than quiet confessions like this. "You're doing better than you think," he said without hesitation. Amelia let out a short, weary laugh. "Doesn't feel like it." "It never does," Daniel replied. "The strongest people almost never feel strong." She studied him then, really looked at the calm eyes that had seen too much, the faint scar near his temple, the posture of a man shaped by responsibility. "You military?" she asked. He nodded once. "Senior officer." Her expression shifted, surprise, respect, caution. "My father was military," she said. "Gone more than he was home." Daniel absorbed that quietly. "I know that story," he said. "I lived it." The engines hummed steadily as dawn hinted faintly at the horizon. Amelia leaned back into her seat, eyes heavy again. But this time she didn't fight the fatigue as hard. She wondered when life had taught her that rest was something she had to earn. She wondered why this stranger felt like a quiet harbor in a storm she never spoke about. Daniel looked ahead, aware that whatever this moment was, it mattered. Not because it would last, but because it reminded him he was still capable of gentleness. The plane continued forward through thinning darkness, carrying two strangers who did not yet know that this flight was only the beginning. The turbulence faded as the plane steadied itself. But something inside Amelia remained unsettled, as if the brief conversation and quiet understanding had opened. A door she hadn't realized was locked. Dawn slowly crept across the sky outside the window, painting the clouds in pale gold and soft pink, and for the first time in months, she felt a strange sense of calm that had nothing to do with reaching her destination. Daniel noticed it too, the way her shoulders finally lowered, the way her grip on the backpack loosened. He had spent most of his life reading people in high-pressure moments, sensing fear, resolve, and deception in seconds, and what he saw in her was not weakness but endurance worn thin. The flight attendant moved down the aisle, offering drinks, and Daniel accepted water, passing another to Amelia when she hesitated. Their fingers brushed briefly, an ordinary moment that somehow carried weight. "Thank you," she said quietly. They spoke more after that, not in long speeches but in fragments, the way tired people do when honesty feels safer than performance. Amelia talked about raising Ethan alone since he was 3, about hospital alarms in the middle of the night, about learning to be brave because there was no one else to be. Daniel listened without interrupting, without offering solutions, and that alone felt like a gift. In return, he spoke of a life shaped by duty, of choices that looked honorable from the outside and lonely from within, of a daughter who had grown up faster than he realized, and a silence at home that medals could never fill. When the captain announced their descent, something unspoken passed between them, a recognition that this suspended world was ending. Amelia felt it first, a tightening in her chest that surprised her. She told herself not to be foolish. This was just a flight, just a stranger. But when the wheels touched the runway and the cabin filled with movement and noise, she felt a sense of loss she couldn't explain. As passengers stood and reached for bags, Daniel rose slowly, then turned to her. "Take care of your son," he said simply. "And don't forget to take care of yourself when you can." She nodded, forcing a smile. "You too," she replied. They walked off the plane in opposite directions, swallowed by the crowd. Amelia didn't look back. She told herself that was strength. Days passed, then weeks. Life resumed its relentless pace. Doctor visits, school meetings, job applications. Yet the memory of that flight lingered, not as a fantasy, but as a reminder that kindness still existed, that she had been seen without having to explain herself. Then one afternoon, as she waited in a hospital corridor while Ethan slept after a routine checkup, a familiar voice said her name. She looked up, stunned. Daniel stood there, out of uniform but unmistakable. He explained he'd been transferred to a nearby base, that he hadn't expected to see her again, but fate had its own timing. Their conversation resumed as if no time had passed, warmer now, grounded in reality rather than chance. Over time, their lives intersected more often. Coffee turned into long walks, shared silences into shared plans. Daniel learned how to be present, not as an officer but as a man. Amelia learned that accepting support did not make her weak. Ethan learned that safety could come in unexpected forms. This was not a fairy tale. It was slow, imperfect, and real, and that made it powerful, because sometimes the smallest moment, a head resting on a shoulder, mid-flight can quietly change the direction of several lives. If this story moved you, if you believe that kindness, patience, and human connection still matter in a noisy world, then stay with us. Subscribe to the channel for more stories like this. Stories that remind us that even at 35,000 feet, when life feels heavy and uncertain, hope can find you when you least expect it.